Hi, Eric Lanask here. We're at WebRTC Expo in California. This is our fifth WebRTC Expo, and on our program today with me is Ted Venema from Frozen Mountain. Ted, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, as I mentioned, this is our fifth WebRTC Expo. What kind of things have you seen evolving in the WebRTC environment over the past 2.5 to 3 years?
I think we've just seen a tremendous acceptance slowly on of WebRTC and the concepts that are there, particularly the need to drive audio-video into applications in today's day and age. You know, we see it all over the place with games, and the fact that WebRTC is there as a standard is really driving the industry now into how things should be done when it comes to that kind of data streaming.
So how has that sort of acceptance, as you say, helped drive Frozen Mountain's business?
Well, we actually are a vendor that markets WebRTC compliant software. We actually provide WebRTC on numerous platforms, including some of those that are not web-based, which is another thing we've seen, is people driving off and wanting to use the same standard on other platforms such as mobile and tablets.
You mentioned gaming. Are there other particular applications or vertical markets that you see more interest and acceptance from?
Yeah, absolutely. WebRTC sort of grew out of the telecommunications world. That was sort of its big driver, people wanting to add video to VoIP and things. But the other two big markets we've really seen, one is telemedicine, the need to keep costs down by providing healthcare almost in-home. So there's been a big driver to have doctors communicate directly with people at home, as well as to provide remote health care. I'm from Canada, and there's a big problem getting doctors to go up north, and they're finding more and more they need to have nurses be able to do that and contact doctors via video when needed. The other big one is education. Obviously, through remote learning and things like that, we've seen a lot of development over the years, and adding video back into that, which WebRTC provides, gives people a really, really good chance almost to bring the classroom back, to be able to see the people. We're finding many educators are coming to us for the software just to be able to do that video conferencing with their students and add a big dimension to remote learning.
So you mentioned cost benefits, but really it sounds like, based on your latter comments, that the use cases and the sort of process efficiencies and the capabilities that WebRTC enables are really the motivating factor.
They really are. I mean, the cost benefit I don't think is the factor. There are some people looking to make sure, of course, that it works, and you need to use the right technology to do that. But really it is the fact of doing things in a new way, and that extra intangible benefit, but very, very strong benefit, is where we see that WebRTC is really driving, particularly in the non-telecommunications world.
And it's something where the end user isn't even aware that it's WebRTC, right? It's just something that they're now able to do. That's
very correct. One of the interesting things about WebRTC is it's really hidden. It's developers that know all about it and know how to deal with it. But for the average end user, all they're seeing is, oh, this is great. I can now see the people I'm talking to, or see my teacher and see my other students, or things of that type, which they've never been able to do before. So to them, it's just a benefit in the actual offering, the business offering.
How do companies generate revenue, or how are they going to generate revenue off of WebRTC?
I think mostly what we're seeing is by enabling their applications to use video and audio-video to a higher degree. It's becoming very, very common. I mean, we're starting to see it in law enforcement, where the need, of course, for today with people's iPhones and everything, people are videoing everything. But more and more, these industries themselves are starting to say, well, let's video it ourselves, let's transmit it, let's track it, you see with Google Glasses and things like that developing. Google Glasses you can communicate with WebRTC. These are the kind of things that are really pushing the industry fast and making WebRTC a standard for any type of real-time communication.
Now, Microsoft has recently sort of tiptoed into the WebRTC environment as well. Is that going to make a big difference? Was that required? And then what about Apple as well? Is that needed for true mass adoption?
I think that Microsoft's entry into it is a big step. They have committed at least to doing something. We're all still waiting to see exactly what. We're also waiting to see if it will be compatible and what that really means. Frozen Mountain, as a vendor, we offer WebRTC on all platforms, including Internet Explorer, Microsoft, and we expect that as Microsoft releases their own, we will just replace what we provide with that. Apple's non-entry certainly is a big deal still to some degree. For Macs, for example, we do provide WebRTC through plugins, which is not the way everybody really wants to go. But also there's the factor that in things like phones for Android and iOS, we still see a lot of people saying, but we also still want the support in native apps anyway. Apple really pushes the idea that the way to get something is download it from the store. There's an app for that. Well, if there's an app for that, then you can put WebRTC in that app without having to have it on Safari or without having to have Apple supported in any other way, as long as you're using an app and not the browser.
Fantastic. Where do you see the real advances coming in WebRTC in the next, we talked about the last few years, in the next, say, 2 to 2.5 years?
I think that certainly Microsoft's entry into it, making it very, very easy to use in the browsers. I think the fact that it's a standard that is moving off the web. It started as a real standard for browsers, encouraging the browser vendors to put it in there. But it's a really, really good standard. As a company that implements it, we know that. It works really well. And we're starting to see it move into all these other platforms as well and be the standard for how you should deal with high-volume streaming over UDP, a whole specific way of dealing with things in real-time communication. And I think it will spread to many, many other different applications, not just healthcare and, as we talked about, in education, but other industries as well.
And Ted, one last question. You're here again, as I mentioned, at WebRTC Expo. What do you expect from the show this year?
Oh, I think we're always looking to see what everybody's doing, what new things are developing. It's still a technology that's new in many ways. We're just really starting to hear some of the real success stories. I mean, people have been working with it for a couple of years and putting it in their applications. We're just now really starting to see the first of those really roll out and provide some real business benefits. So I think we're going to hear more of those stories at this conference, and just to see what everybody's doing. It's a new industry. There's still a lot of players.
Great, Ted. Thanks so much for joining us here again this week.